Chapter 10. The squad together. Tensions and strategy. The warehouse smelled of damp wood and smoke, remnants from their last battle. Maps and notes were spread across the cracked concrete floor, candles flickering faintly. The squad huddled together, exhaustion etched on each face, but determination burning in their eyes. Yvette stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, her gaze sharp. We've survived, but we're not done. They're learning, adapting. Every attack gets harder. We need a plan that ends this, before they adapt even further. Eddie shifted uncomfortably, rubbing his arm where a Minnie-Light had scratched him during his solo run. Yeah, I get it. Plans are fine, but action wins fights. We've been overthinking this. Yvette's eyes narrowed. Action without thought gets people killed, including you, Eddie. Narvel leaned against a crate, casual and smirking, lighting another Molotov. She's right. We need strategy, but we also need bold moves. We can't just sit around plotting. We need to hit them hard. Doe remained silent, observing. His calm presence contrasted sharply with the tension, but his eyes missed nothing. Every flicker of movement outside the warehouse, every shadow in the corners of the maps, every body language cue, the squad could feel the weight of his scrutiny. Yvette turned to Doe. We'll need your insight. Where do you think their main nest is? Doe pointed to a series of abandoned buildings near Lake Majori. They converged there. Small patrols now, but soon, a large gathering. If we strike before they fully assemble, we can weaken them substantially. Narvel nodded. Molotovs and traps will do the rest. I've got enough fuel to burn 100 of them in one night. Eddie clenched his fists. Finally, some action. I can't wait to throw some punches. Yvette shot him a look. Focus, Eddie. Follow orders. No heroics. But tension lingered. The squad had survived their first major battle, but trust was fraying. Eddie's recklessness was a concern, Narvel's detached smirk unsettling, and Doe's silence unnerving. Each member was brilliant, but they were also volatile. One mistake, one betrayal, could cost them everything. The firelight flickered over the maps as Yvette laid out the assault plan, multiple entry points, traps to funnel the Minni-Lights, and escape routes in case things went wrong. The squad listened intently, nodding, absorbing every detail. As the meeting ended and the squad dispersed into the night, Yvette's mind lingered on one unsettling thought. Narvel's behavior had always been slightly off. Was it paranoia, or was there more to the betrayal she had glimpsed before? Doe's calm gaze lingered on the maps long after everyone else left. The city's shadows were alive, moving, plotting. And the squad, no matter how skilled, would need every ounce of strategy, courage, and trust to survive the battles ahead. Chapter 11. Doe, the Divine Edge. The night air was heavy, thick with mist that clung to Doe like a second skin. The city seemed to hold its breath as he moved silently through the streets, each step deliberate, almost predestined. His instincts guided him, sensing danger before it even arrived. A faint scream echoed from a distant alleyway. Without hesitation, Doe sprinted toward it, his movements fluid and precise, like a shadow in motion. Around him, the city blurred, lights flickering, sounds muted except for the pulse of danger in his mind. At the end of the alley, a group of Minni-Lights cornered 3 children. Their faces were grotesque, twisted into cruel masks, eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. The children huddled together, terrified, powerless. Doe didn't hesitate. He lunged, intercepting a creature midair, sending it crashing into a brick wall. Another screeched and twisted toward him, but he moved with uncanny speed, striking with a force that seemed almost divine. Every blow, every motion was exact, efficient, designed to neutralize the threat before it could strike again. The children watched, wide-eyed, as he dispatched Minnie-Light after Minnie-Light. Even the creature's unnatural movements couldn't match his precision. It was as if he could predict their attacks, see the openings before they existed. When the last Minnie-Light fled into the shadows, Doe turned to the children, his presence calm but commanding. "Stay behind me," he instructed, voice low and steady. As he guided them to safety, memories flickered through his mind, flames, voices calling his name, hands pulling him from the brink. Whispers older than the city itself had told him he was sent to protect, to endure, to fight. He didn't question it, he simply acted. Outside the danger zone, the children clung to one another, staring at Doe as if he were a guardian angel. One whispered, barely audible, Who are you?" Doe's eyes met theirs, calm and unwavering. "Someone who won't let them hurt you." As he disappeared back into the misty streets, Doe knew the war for the city was far from over. The Minni-Lights were evolving, growing more cunning, but so was he, silent, relentless, unstoppable. And somewhere in the shadows, the city waited, trembling beneath the footsteps of a protector it might never understand. Chapter 12. The Squad Together. Close Calls. The streets around Booker's Creek were silent, but the squad knew better. Silence was a warning. Mist swirled low, hiding movement, hiding eyes that glowed faintly in the darkness. Yvette signaled for everyone to spread out, each member taking a position along the narrow alleyways and crumbling bridges. Narvel checked his Molotovs and flammable liquids. Eddie cracked his knuckles with a grin, and Doe simply watched, calm, calculating. Then the first shrieks erupted. The Minni-Lights emerged from the shadows, twisted, decayed, their bodies growing unnaturally, faces that had once seemed childlike now grotesque and horrifying. Trap them here, Yvette yelled. Don't let them escape. The squad moved in perfect synchronization. Narvel's flames erupted, forcing the creatures back, while Eddie charged, fists flying, breaking through the first wave. Doe intercepted those that slipped past, his movements fluid and precise, every strike deliberate. A group of civilians stumbled into the chaos, lost and terrified. Yvette ran to them, guiding them behind barricades while instructing the squad to hold the line. Watch their patterns, she shouted. They're learning, moving faster, anticipating. Indeed, the Minni-Lights were evolving. Some twisted midair, others phased through narrow gaps, and a few even mimicked the squad's movements, as if studying their strategies. The horror intensified as their glowing eyes reflected madness and intelligence, far beyond human comprehension. Eddie swung at one creature, only to have it vanish and reappear behind him. He ducked just in time as claws grazed his shoulder, tearing his jacket. Doe intercepted, grabbing the Minni-Light and hurling it into a nearby fire trap. Narvel's smirk disappeared, replaced by concentration. They're testing us, adapting, we need to finish this. Yvette barked orders, directing traps, positioning civilians, and keeping the squad coordinated under extreme pressure. Each close call, each near miss, reminded them that failure wasn't an option. By the end of the night, several Minni-Lights lay burned or broken on the streets. Trapped civilians were freed, shaking but alive. The squad gathered, soaked and exhausted, but victorious, though only temporarily. Doe's eyes scanned the streets, lingering on shadows that shifted unnaturally. This isn't over, he said quietly. They're evolving faster than we can predict. Yvette nodded, wiping soot from her face. Then we adapt faster, or we die. Eddie leaned against a wall, breathing heavily. I think I'm finally starting to understand. This isn't just about fighting, it's about surviving. Narvel, ever calculating, lit another Molotov and whispered to himself, soon, the city will break, and we'll see who really controls it. The squad had survived, but the night had shown them a terrifying truth. The Minni-Lights weren't just monsters. They were learning, changing, and growing more dangerous with every encounter. And the city's shadows were far from empty. Chapter 13. Yvette, confronting betrayal. The warehouse was silent except for the soft drip of water from the cracked roof. Yvette crouched in the shadows, her eyes fixed on Narvel as he unpacked more supplies, this time, vials filled with a strange, glowing liquid that Minni-Lights eagerly consumed. Her stomach churned. She had suspected his betrayal for weeks, but seeing it unfold with her own eyes made her blood run cold. Every attack, every escalation of chaos in the city, it had been his doing. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Confrontation was unavoidable. The squad deserved to know the truth before more lives were lost. Narvel, she called, stepping into the dim light. Her voice was calm, but each word carried authority. What the hell are you doing? Narvel looked up, smirking. Yvette, I was wondering how long it would take for you to figure it out. Figure it out, she snapped. You've been feeding them, manipulating us, risking lives, our lives. How could you betray the squad like this? Narvel shrugged, unbothered. The city isn't just ours to protect. There's power in chaos, and these little creatures, they're a means to an end. Yvette's fists clenched. Means to an end? You're insane. You've been putting everyone in danger. Innocents, us, the city itself. We trusted you. Narvel's eyes flicked to the shadows outside the warehouse. Trust? Trust is for the weak. I've been smarter than all of you, playing the long game. Her heart pounded. She had to warn the squad, But she also knew that confronting him now could be dangerous. Narvel wasn't just a traitor, he was lethal. One wrong move could end her. Yvette backed toward the exit, voice rising. I'm telling the squad, you're done, Narvel. We're not letting you destroy everything we've been fighting for. Narvel's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of frustration. Go ahead. Try. But by the time you act, it might already be too late. As Yvette slipped back into the night to find Doe and Eddie, her mind raced. The squad's trust was fractured, but they had to act. The Minni-Lights were stronger, more numerous, and Narvel's betrayal had made them an even deadlier threat. She reached the warehouse where the rest of the squad had regrouped, breathless but determined. Narvel's working with them, she said without preamble. Every escalation, every attack, it's him. He's the reason this city is bleeding. Eddie's eyes widened, fists clenching. That son of a. Doe's calm voice cut through the rising tension. Then we adjust. Betrayal doesn't end the fight, it changes it. Yvette nodded, relief and fear warring inside her. The squad had to survive the coming storm, not just the Minni-Lights, but the traitor within. And in the shadows, Narvel watched, anticipating their reaction, already planning his next move. The war for the city was no longer just against monsters, it was against one of their own. Chapter 14. The squad together, the ritual approaches. The wind howled across the outskirts of Lake Majori, carrying a chill that sank deep into the bones. The squad huddled together, the dim glow of fire casting shadows that danced like ghosts across the rocks and water. Yvette studied the map spread across the ground, tracing the paths where the Minni-Lights were known to gather. This is it, she said, voice firm. The ritual they've been building toward, it's happening tonight. If we don't stop it, they'll gain power we can't even imagine. Eddie flexed his arms, restless. So what's the plan? Hit them hard, hit them fast, and burn them all. Yvette shook her head. No, it's not that simple. The ritual is tied to the water. If they succeed, every Minni-Light in the city, and maybe beyond, will grow stronger. We need precision. Traps, fire, strategy. We cannot fail. Narvel leaned against a tree, a faint smirk on his lips. Precision is overrated. Sometimes chaos works better. Doe's eyes scanned the area, calm and unyielding. He had already noted weak points, escape routes, and likely ambush locations. We set traps here, and along the eastern edge, he instructed, pointing to locations where fire could corral the Minni-Lights. And stay together. Any separation, any hesitation, will cost lives. The squad split up, moving with silent efficiency. Eddie lit the first line of fire traps, his hand steady despite the fear coursing through him. Narvel laid incendiary devices, careful but calculating, always aware of the flames around him. Yvette moved among the team, checking positions, reinforcing barricades, and ensuring that the civilians they had rescued were safely out of harm's way. The lake itself seemed to pulse, an unnatural rhythm that made the hairs on the back of their necks rise. Mist rolled over the water, hiding shadows that flickered unnaturally. Somewhere in the distance, a high-pitched screech echoed, a signal that the Minni-Lights were gathering. Doe stood at the forefront, silent and vigilant. His eyes caught movement before anyone else. They're coming, he said, voice low but steady. Yvette raised her hand. Positions. No mistakes. Remember, fire first, trap second, protect each other at all costs. The night stretched on, tense and silent except for the subtle sound of claws against rocks and water. Each member of the squad felt the weight of what was coming, the largest confrontation yet, the culmination of weeks of horror and betrayal. Eddie swallowed hard, gripping his weapon tightly. This is it, no going back. Narvel's smirk widened, but it no longer carried the same confidence. Even he knew the squad's determination was formidable. And as the mist thickened and shadows gathered along the lake, the squad braced themselves. They were about to face the Minni-Lights' full fury, and the night would decide more than just the fate of the city, it would determine who among them would survive. Chapter 15. Narvel, facing the creatures. Narvel crept along the edge of Lake Majori, the smell of damp earth and burning fuel filling the air. Flames flickered from the traps the squad had set, casting twisted shadows over the water, but Narvel's eyes were fixed on something else, the Minni-Lights gathering in the mist, preparing for the ritual. They don't know I'm here, he muttered under his breath, a thrill of excitement coursing through him. They never do. The creatures circled in the shallow water, their distorted, glowing forms writhing unnaturally. Some were small, others already morphing into larger, more grotesque shapes, their tiny hands clawing at the air as if conducting some dark symphony. Narvel held up a vial of the glowing liquid, letting it catch the firelight. "Drink up," he whispered, tossing it toward the nearest creature. It snapped it up instantly, eyes brightening with unnatural intensity. For a moment, Narvel felt invincible. The squad had no idea what he was capable of, no idea he had been manipulating the creatures all along. This was his game, his ultimate advantage. But then something changed. The creatures stopped moving as a group, their glowing eyes fixing on him, not with the hunger of before, but with recognition. A high-pitched, synchronized screech pierced the night, deafening in its intensity. Narvel froze. He had underestimated them. The Minni-Lights weren't just pawns. They had begun to think, to recognize threats, to remember betrayals. His smirk faltered. Suddenly, one leapt at him from the water, claws extended. Narvel rolled aside, narrowly avoiding a fatal strike. Another surged from the mist, and then another, the creatures moving faster, smarter, coordinated. You can't do this," he shouted, panic rising. I control you." But control was an illusion. The Minni-Lights turned on him with a vengeance, their screeches echoing across the lake. Narvel stumbled backward, flames from the squad's traps illuminating the chaos, but nowhere near enough to save him. He realized, too late, that his betrayal had consequences beyond his calculation. He had played with fire, both literally and figuratively, and the creatures he thought he could command were now turning the power against him. In the shadows, Doe and Yvette watched from afar, ready to intervene if necessary, but Narvel's fate was beginning to seal itself. The man who had betrayed the city, the squad, and morality itself was now a target of his own making. Narvel's laughter, frantic and unhinged, cut through the night, then it abruptly stopped, replaced by the horrifying realization that the Minni-Lights had adapted, and he was alone. Chapter 16. The Squad Together, Lake Majori. The mist over Lake Majori hung thick, swirling around the squad like a living thing. The Minni-Lights were everywhere, small and fast, some grotesquely large, all moving with an intelligence that made the hairs on the back of the squad's necks stand on end. Yvette took point, yelling commands over the chaos. "Split into teams. Fire traps first. Protect each other." Eddie charged forward, fists blazing, taking out smaller creatures with reckless determination. He ducked under a swipe from a clawed hand, rolling to his feet and swinging again. Each strike carried desperation, each movement a lesson learned from his previous encounters. Doe moved silently, a shadow among shadows. He intercepted creatures mid-leap, their claws scraping the ground where he had just been. One Minni-Light surged toward him from the side, larger, faster, stronger. Doe caught it in midair, twisting its body and hurling it into a fire trap. Flames licked its twisted form, shrieks echoing across the lake. Narvel, desperate and cornered, lit several Molotovs at once, flames erupting around him. But the creatures, now far smarter than before, circled him, shrinking the margin of safety with every second. Yvette saw it and signaled for Doe, but he was already moving toward the danger, his calm precision cutting through the chaos. The battle raged like a storm. Minni-Lights emerged from the mist, from the water, from the trees. Screeches filled the night, punctuated by the crackling of fire, the thud of fists, and the screams of the few terrified humans caught in the outskirts. Eddie fought like never before, protecting Yvette and the civilians she had brought to safety. He ducked, punched, rolled, and blocked, each action sharper, faster, and more deliberate than the last. For the first time, he wasn't just reckless, he was effective. Doe, however, was not invincible. A sudden surge of Minni-Lights overwhelmed him, a dozen claws tearing across his arm and shoulder. Pain shot through him, and he stumbled into the water, half submerged, fighting to stay on his feet. Yvette and Eddie rushed to his side, helping him back onto solid ground. "Stay with me, Doe," Yvette shouted, fear lacing her voice. He nodded, gritting his teeth, and sprang back into the fray. Even wounded, he moved with inhuman precision, cutting down Minni-Lights with calculated strikes that seemed almost predestined. Narvel, seeing the tide turn against him, tried to escape, but several Minni-Lights surrounded him, a cruel reflection of the chaos he had unleashed. His fate, intertwined with his betrayal, was sealing itself. Hours felt like minutes. The squad fought, burned, and corralled the creatures, but the sheer numbers tested their limits. Finally, As dawn began to break over the lake, the last of the Minni-Lights either fled or burned in the squad's traps. Exhausted and bloodied, the heroes stood among the wreckage. Doe collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily. Yvette knelt beside him, pressing a hand to his shoulder. "You almost didn't make it," she said, voice shaking. Eddie, bruised but triumphant, wiped soot from his face. We did it. We survived." But in the shadows, 20 Minni-Lights had fled, eyes glowing faintly. The victory was monumental, but incomplete. And somewhere nearby, Narvel's fate was being decided by the creatures he had sought to control. The squad had won the battle, but the war, and the consequences of betrayal, was far from over. Chapter 17, Eddie, The Reckoning. The morning fog hung low over the smoldering ruins of Lake Majori. The air was thick with smoke, the stench of burnt wood and scorched Minni-Lights lingering. Eddie's fists were raw, bruised, and bloody, but his resolve had never been stronger. "Those that fled," Eddie muttered under his breath, scanning the distant shadows along the tree line. 20 Minni-Lights had escaped during the chaos, and he knew that if they regrouped, the city could face destruction once more. Yvette appeared at his side, her voice sharp. "We can't let them get away. You've learned a lot tonight, Eddie. Now's your chance to lead." Eddie clenched his jaw, nodding. He remembered every lesson from the past encounters, the timing of attacks, the creatures' patterns, their weaknesses, and, most importantly, teamwork. He wasn't the reckless fighter he had been, he was something more. The squad moved silently through the forested outskirts, weapons ready. Eddie signaled silently, taking point, leading them toward the fleeing creatures. His eyes flicked from shadow to shadow, anticipating movement. The Minni-Lights struck first, launching from the underbrush with claws and shrieks. But this time, Eddie was prepared. He dodged, countered, and struck with precision, guiding the squad through coordinated attacks that cut off escape routes. Yvette flanked, using traps to funnel the creatures, while Doe's calm efficiency neutralized the faster, more cunning Minni-Lights. Eddie's fists became the hammer, Doe's skill the anvil, Yvette's strategy the guide. Together, they were unstoppable. Eddie noticed one creature lagging, smaller and weaker than the rest. Its glowing eyes betrayed fear and desperation. He hesitated for a split second, then realized, this was the key. He remembered Doe's words, "Understanding your enemy is as important as defeating it." He struck with calculated force, targeting the creature's weak points, and it collapsed in a burst of ash. Observing the effect, Eddie signaled the squad to focus fire similarly, each creature falling in turn, until only shadows remained. By midday, the last fleeing Minni-Lights had been neutralized. Eddie stood among the scorched trees, bruised and bloodied but victorious. For the first time, he felt the weight of true heroism, not just surviving or fighting, but protecting, leading, and making the hard choices. Doe approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've grown. Tonight, you became more than reckless, you became a hero." Eddie nodded, exhaustion mingling with pride. He glanced toward Yvette, who gave a small, approving smile. The squad had survived, the city had been saved, and yet he knew this wasn't the end. The shadows always lingered. But for now, Eddie had earned his reckoning. Chapter 18, The Squad Together, Victory and Loss. Smoke rose in thin wisps from the scorched earth of Lake Majori. The final echoes of the battle, the shrieks, the crashes, the crackling of fire, had faded, leaving an eerie silence that pressed down on the squad like a heavy shroud. They stood together, bloodied, bruised, and exhausted. The air smelled of ash and damp earth, a reminder of the chaos they had endured. Around them, the charred remains of hundreds of Minni-Lights littered the ground. Victory had been won, but it was not without cost. Yvette scanned the scene, her sharp eyes missing nothing. 280 Minni-Lights, destroyed, 20 fled. It's not perfect, but it's a start. Her voice carried both relief and sorrow. Eddie, leaning against a blackened tree, wiped soot from his face. "We did it. We actually did it." He smiled briefly, but the bruises on his arms and the exhaustion in his body reminded him that survival had not been easy. Doe stood slightly apart, silent, his eyes scanning the shadows where the last fleeing Minni-Lights had vanished. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Though they had won, the threat was not gone. The city remained vulnerable, and he had been pushed closer to the edge than ever before. Then came the discovery, Narvel. The squad found him near the edge of the lake, lifeless, surrounded by the remnants of creatures he had tried to control. His betrayal had led him here, and the Minni-Lights had exacted their revenge. The squad gathered silently, each processing the sight in their own way. Eddie muttered under his breath, anger and disbelief swirling together. He brought this on himself. Yvette knelt, her hands trembling slightly as she inspected the scene. Betrayal has a cost, she said quietly. And he paid it in full. Doe remained silent, his eyes distant, as if seeing something beyond the physical world. The squad had survived, Narvel had fallen, and yet the darkness lingered. Victory had been claimed, but it was shadowed by loss, betrayal, and the knowledge that the Minni-Lights were cunning, evolving, and unpredictable. For a long moment, they stood together, mourning what had been lost while acknowledging what had been saved. The city, battered and scarred, remained intact thanks to their courage and unity. Yvette finally spoke, her voice firm and resolute. We've won this battle, but the war isn't over. We rebuild, we protect, and we remain vigilant. Eddie nodded, fist still clenched but eyes steady. We'll be ready next time, whatever comes. Doe, his calm presence grounding them, added, we survived because we fought together. That will always be our strength. The squad lingered for a while longer, the weight of victory and loss settling over them. They had destroyed hundreds of Minni-Lights, lost a comrade to betrayal, and faced horrors that would haunt the city forever. But in that moment, united, they knew they could face whatever shadows remained. The sun began to rise over Lake Majori, casting a pale light across the battlefield. The city was safe, for now, but the squad knew the vigilance they had embraced would never end. Chapter 19, Doe, Aftermath. The city was quiet now, but Doe could feel its heartbeat, the subtle tremors, the faint whispers in alleys, the shadows stretching longer than they should. The battle at Lake Majori had ended, but the war for the city's soul was far from over. He walked alone along the riverbank, the water reflecting the pale morning light. The flames from the night before had mostly died, leaving charred earth and the scent of smoke lingering in the air. His mind wandered to the squad, Eddie, Yvette, the others, and the losses they had endured. Narvel's betrayal still weighed heavily on him, but he pushed it aside. They had survived, yes, they had saved countless lives. But Doe knew better than anyone that survival was temporary. The Minni-Lights had fled, smarter, faster, and hungrier. They would return. A flicker in the shadows caught his eye. He froze, senses heightened. For a heartbeat, he imagined the creatures, ready to strike. But it was only a stray cat, eyes reflecting the sunlight. He let out a slow breath, tension easing slightly, yet never fully leaving. Doe sat on a broken stone, gaze fixed on the horizon. Memories surfaced, glimpses of a past he rarely revealed, whispers of purpose and destiny, and moments where he had been pulled back from death, time and again. He was more than human, yet the city did not know why he fought, why he protected it so relentlessly. The thought of the squad filled him with quiet pride. Eddie had grown from a reckless fighter into a hero, Yvette's resolve had been unwavering, and even in betrayal, Narvel had reminded them of the dangers of ambition unchecked. But Doe's eyes returned to the shadows, to the city streets that waited silently. The Minni-Lights were gone for now, but darkness always lingered. Evil adapted, and Doe would have to adapt faster. He stood, the weight of responsibility settling on him like a mantle. The city would sleep for now, but he would not. Not fully, not ever. Rest if you can, he whispered to the empty streets. But I am still here, watching, waiting, protecting. And as the sun climbed higher, casting light across the city, Doe vanished into the alleys, a silent guardian among shadows, ready for the next storm. Chapter 20, The Squad Together, Vigilance. The city awoke slowly, its streets quiet but scarred from the chaos of the past nights. Smoke had cleared, buildings still stood, and the river shimmered with the reflection of a pale sun. For now, the shadows seemed empty, but the squad knew better. Yvette stood on a rooftop overlooking the city, binoculars in hand. Her eyes swept every alley, every dark corner, every flicker of movement. We've won the battle, she said quietly, but the war isn't over, not while shadows like these exist. Eddie joined her, leaning against the parapet, bruises still darkening his skin. We fought hard, we survived, but yeah, I can feel it, they're out there somewhere. Doe stepped out from the stairwell, calm as ever, his presence grounding the tension. They'll always be out there, he said. We stopped most, but some fled. They'll learn, adapt, and return. Yvette sighed. Then we keep watching, we keep fighting, we don't let our guard down. Eddie cracked a small smile. You mean, keep being heroes, huh? Doe's expression softened, just slightly, before returning to its usual calm. Exactly. Heroes, guardians, whatever the city needs. We're the line between the shadows and the people who live in them unaware. Narvel was gone, a grim reminder of betrayal and ambition's cost. The squad had learned what it meant to trust, and what it meant when trust was broken. But together, they were stronger, wiser, and ready. As the sun climbed higher, the squad split up to patrol different parts of the city. Each step was measured, deliberate, every shadow scrutinized. The streets were not safe, but for now, the people could breathe. In the alleys, along the riverbanks, and in the abandoned buildings, faint, glowing eyes watched them from the darkness. The Minni-Lights had survived. They had learned. They were waiting. And yet, the squad was ready. Together, vigilant, unyielding, they disappeared into the city streets. They were the guardians, the watchers, the ones who would not falter, not even in the darkest shadows. The city slept, for now. But the night whispered, and the squad listened. The end?